Mark chapter 9. Once again, whether you've been following along with us, if this is your first week or you've missed a few weeks, jump back in, dive in. Get it? I'm sitting on like an ocean. Anyways, that's not funny. But dive into Mark chapter 9. Read it this week as we get ready to go to beach camp. I'm sitting on a fake beach right now, but next week, hopefully we will be sitting on a real beach in Galveston, Texas, and I'm super excited. But this week is VBS week, and this week we are in Mark chapter 9. And like we've said with a lot of chapters throughout the book of Mark, a lot happens. So a lot happens in chapter 9, and we're not going to be able to get to all of it, but we're going to kind of try to fly through it quickly and focus in on a couple key things that I think are really big and really important for us to see today. So first of all, we start out with verse 1, that Jesus tells the disciples that some of them will not die before they see the kingdom of God come in power. Now that's kind of confusing because God's kingdom has not come. He's not returned. Christ has not returned. And yet, all 12 of the disciples are dead. So, was Jesus wrong? What is going on here? And I think the answer is Jesus isn't wrong, but as we're going to see in verses 2 through 13, that actually the kingdom of God does reveal itself in the transfiguration, which we're going to talk about in a second. So, these men saw the kingdom of God in a glimpse, but not fully before they died. So in verses 2 through 13, Jesus takes 3 of his closest disciples, John, Peter, and James, and they go up to a mountain. And up on the mountain, Jesus is glorified. His clothes become white. Elijah and Moses show up. God even reaffirms and validates his ministry, that he is the Son of God and that they should listen to him. And it's this amazing moment where the kingdom of God is on display. And then it all goes away. As quickly as it happened, it goes away. And Jesus wanted his 3 key disciples to see this, but he warns them not to say anything yet because he's not been crucified yet. He hasn't had everything that was supposed to happen, but he wanted them to see this. And so they start walking down the mountain, and on their way down, they find the rest of the disciples in this big argument surrounded around this little boy that's possessed with a demon. And the issue is that the other 9 disciples that were left that didn't go up on the mountain, they couldn't heal this boy. The demon would not come out of this boy, and the Pharisees are arguing, and the scribes are arguing, and everybody's arguing, and it's this big kerfuffle, and it's a mess, and Jesus walks in, and he's like, what is going on here? Well, come to find out, the man and the boy, the father was upset that they couldn't heal his boy of this demon, and Jesus gets upset, and they have this interaction, and I just want you to see what happens, because I think this is really, really, really cool. In verse 21, we read, and Jesus asked his father, how long has this been happening to him? And he, the father, said, from childhood. And it has often cast him into fire and into water and tried to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Now, the Father demonstrates a weak faith. If you could do something, Jesus, that'd be cool. Not sure if you can, but if, that'd be great. Look at Jesus' response. And Jesus said to him, if you can, like Jesus is like, if, really, man, have you not seen all the things that I've been doing, all the people I've healed, the way I've fed thousands of people with just a few fish and some bread, all of these miracles, I tell the storms to stop and they stop. Jesus says, if you can. And then he says, all things are possible for one who believes. And immediately, there's that word again, the father of the boy cried out and said, I believe, help my unbelief. And we see that the boy convulses and yells out, and Jesus rebukes the demon, and everyone thinks the boy is dead. But then Jesus helps him up. But I want to go back to the father's statement. I believe, help my unbelief. That's powerful. Because I don't know about you, but I know for me, I've had times where I've doubted, or I've struggled, or I've wondered if what God said was really true, or if the promises God made were really going to happen, or just gone through a hard time in life. And when we find ourselves in those situations where we're doubting God's goodness, when we're doubting God, when we're struggling, our cry, the cry of our heart needs to be, I believe, help my unbelief. We're broken, sinful humans. We need God's help to be strong in our faith and our belief. And we see this example, and we see Jesus step in and do something amazing because the Father asks for help even in believing. Sometimes life gets hard. Sometimes you wonder if God is really good. And when you find yourself there, be like this boy's father and cry out, I believe, help my unbelief. And God will meet you there, and he will give you strength, and he will move you forward. And so Jesus heals this boy in this incredible story. I love that story. And we see that he continues to talk about how he's going to be crucified, he's going to die, and he's going to resurrect. But his disciples, they don't get it. They're not understanding it. They're missing it, which is, again, also very true for me a lot of times. God tells me something, I see something in his word, and I don't get it, even though it should be plain as day until later. But as Jesus is explaining what's going to happen to him, the disciples are too busy arguing about who's the greatest disciple. It's kind of funny because Jesus says, what are you guys talking about? And they're like, oh, nothing. But Jesus knows because he's God. And so he says, if anyone, in the end of verse 35, if anyone would be first, he must be last of all and the servant of all. And he took a child and put him in the midst of them. And taking him in his arms, he said to them, whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. And I love this because the disciples are worried about themselves, their selfishness. What is good it for me? Am I going to be the greatest? Am I going to be the best? Or maybe in today's term, am I going to have the most followers? Am I going to be the most popular? Am I going to be the coolest? And Jesus says, actually, it's the least of you that's the best. It's the one who's humble. It's the one who doesn't make their life about them, but makes it about God and others first. Is that true of your life? Is your life about you, or is it about God and others before yourself? Are you first, where everything's about you? Or are you third, where you put God and others first? And then finally, Jesus ends with a pretty stark warning. He talks about the seriousness of sin. And he says, whoever causes one of these little ones, one of these children who believes in me to sin, it would be better for him if a great millstone or a heavy stone were hung around his neck and he were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life crippled with two hands than to go to hell, to the unquenchable fire. If you have a foot that causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life lame with 2 feet than with 2 feet to be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to sin, tear it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of heaven with 1 eye than with 2 eyes and be thrown into hell. Guys, this is a reminder of the seriousness of sin. If you are struggling with a sin right now, don't actually cut off your hand. Don't actually gouge out your eye. But the point is that sin is so serious, we must get rid of it at all costs. Maybe you're struggling with something right now. Maybe it's some sort of temptation. Maybe it's looking at inappropriate images on your phone, maybe even Instagram or something like that. Come and talk to one of your leaders. Do whatever you can to get that out of your life. Maybe you are really struggling with gossip and you really are struggling with wanting to talk bad about people. Stop talking to people who encourage you to gossip. Cut them out of your life for a temporary time. Talk to a leader, confess, do whatever it takes to get sin out of your life because Jesus is clear. Sin is wicked and it is awful. John Owen, an old dead guy, once said, be killing sin or sin will kill you. Get rid of sin at all costs. Follow Jesus. Learn from the disciples' mistakes and their pridefulness and walk with Jesus. And even if you're having a hard time, cry out and say, God, I believe, help my unbelief.